This is the Undefeated Sports Network. Sport Court, and court is in session.
What's up, everybody? Good evening, and welcome into another episode of Sport Court right here on the Undefeated Sports Network. I am Andrew Tarbill. To my left is my guy, Angelo Ace Camacho. And we got an interesting show lined up for you guys. We're going to be Bears heavy tonight as we talk about the latest rumors that are going around with our guy, Justin Fields, what this team's going to look like. We'll address the postseason presser and much more right here tonight on Sport Court. What's up, Ace? How are we doing tonight?
What's up, Tarbill? I'm doing good, man. How are you?
Doing well, man. It's been an interesting last couple days. Glad to have you here on the air to talk things over with and chalk it up, as always, with one of the best sports minds that we have access to. We have a very special guest joining us this evening, our guy Erik Lambert from Sports Mockery. And we're going to go ahead and bring Erik into the stream now, and we'll get right into it, guys. Erik, good evening. How are you doing?
I'm good, guys. How are you?
Not
Doing
bad,
well,
man.
thanks.
You know, it's a good couple days for the Bears in terms of, getting where I think they needed to get to. Number one pick, can't really go wrong there. I know I've seen you guys do a lot of articles about potential moves that the Bears could be making. Why don't we just jump right into it, Erik? What are some things that you think the Bears could potentially do with this number one pick?
Oh, there's no shortage of possibilities that they can. I mean, they have so much leverage in this situation because really, even if they don't get interest in the pick, which they're almost going to get interest in that pick, because when you look at free agency and the trade market, there's not going to be a lot of proven quarterbacks available. You've got Brady. He's only going to go to one team. We don't know which one yet. You got Derek Carr's another one, and maybe Jimmy Garoppolo. And if any of the teams outside of the top 10 get one of those guys like the Titans, the Jets, the Commanders, one of those types, it immediately forces one of those teams that are inside the top 10, the Panthers, the Falcons, the Raiders, all of a sudden those teams become more desperate come draft time to get somebody that they want, and that increases the likelihood that they'll want to talk to the Bears about, the number one pick. So they already have tons of trade leverage, so we know that. And even if they don't get an offer that they like, they still have the number one pick of the draft, and they can pick the absolute best player on their board. So they're pretty much sitting pretty right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting, Erik. A lot of the takes, especially in the national media right now, are geared towards the possibility of the Bears trading away Justin Fields. And you've got two very opposite sides of the fence, right? You've got the guys who see the potential in Bryce Young. Me being an Alabama fan, obviously watched him play a lot of college ball. However, I don't think it's a smart move for the Bears to move on from Justin Fields. I am on the other side of that coin, whereas I believe they need to leverage as much as they can and build around the young quarterback who really, with no pieces around him, had what I would consider an above average season. Rushing wise, definitely. Obviously, we still need to see some improvement in the passing game, but give the guy some weapons, put a line around him, and I think we'll see Justin Fields transpire in a similar arc to what Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen both saw in their year 3 jumps. So just kind of want to know your feeling, Erik, with this national narrative. Do you think there's any chance the Bears move on from Justin Fields, or do you think that they keep him and build around him, as, in my opinion, they should?
Well, this is the NFL, so we know that you never say never about any possibility when it comes to this league. I will say the odds of them moving on from Justin are remote, considerably remote, because he improved under tough circumstances this year. He was a playmaker in many different ways. We all know that he didn't have the passing season he wanted or anybody else wanted. It was a difficult situation, bad protection, weapons weren't great. I think the logical plan for the Bears here is to stick with him, give him another year, give him some more weapons, give him better protection. Let's reevaluate him in 2023. If he improves more, great. We'll stick with him, keep going and moving forward. If he sort of regresses or stays the same, then they can go into 2024 thinking, okay, we'll probably have some extra draft currency if we do trade down, which most people think they probably will. And then we can use that ammunition to maybe go after a quarterback of our choosing at that point. So there's really the reason a lot of people are sort of up in arms about this is because the Bears had the number 1 pick. So they have their choice of any of the quarterbacks in this draft. And the odds of that happening again for them next year are considerably remote. So I think that's why there's a sense of urgency in that regard. But at the same time, Justin's 23. He's still young, really young. So he improved. He thinks he can improve more. I think he can improve more. It'll be his second year in the same offense, which is something a lot of people are ignoring about all of this. So I think they stick with him. I think they're probably going to end up trading down, and I think they're going to stockpile picks and just build around them. And I think that's the plan Poles is ultimately going to go with.
So, Eric, over $100 million in cap space. That's a lot of money. Regimes in the past, we watched the Bears make really poor signings over the history of free agency. Really, a few hits here and there. They always seem to go outside the team to bring in these big guys or spend this money. With all that money, there's a lot of guys like Darnell Mooney, Cole Kmet, even Justin Fields in a couple of years, if they deem that he's worthy of that extension. Do you see them possibly looking to take care of more in-house guys with big-time money, or do you think they're going to go outside in free agency to fill those needs?
I think they're going to do pretty much both. I think they want to extend Cole Kmet. I think Poles made that pretty clear in his press conference. He's a big fan, especially after the solid year Kmet had. Retaining him would be one thing. Montgomery, depending on his price tag, I think is somebody they want to keep. And then the 2 other guys are Mooney, who we talked about. I don't think they want to rush into Claypool yet because they want to see more of him before they do that. But Mooney, he was playing well before he unfortunately got hurt. Plus, he has a good rapport with Justin, so that would keep Justin happy. I think that's something they're going to explore. And Jalen Johnson is the other one. He was playing really good football. He was their best corner. One of the holding points with him is his lack of turnovers, which continues to be an issue with him aside from his coverage and all that. So it's really difficult to figure out where the money's going to be with some of these guys, but obviously the Bears have more than enough to take care of all of them if they wish, and still go outside the team and add a bunch of other pieces. So they have so much flexibility going into this offseason in regards to their cash flow. So I think they're going to handle some of their in-house guys, and I also think they're going to be pretty aggressive outside as well, depending on who becomes available.
Yeah, I totally agree there, Eric. One sticking point for me really this whole season has been offensive line, right? We saw over the last few weeks the offensive line was decimated by injuries. You've got guys who are third-string talent out there with Justin Fields. The last game that he played getting sacked, I believe it was 7 or 8 times during that game. Obviously, we've seen some bright spots in the offensive line. I think Braxton Jones exceeded expectations for where he was taken in the draft last year. But I guess, where do you see the Bears? Obviously, I shouldn't say obviously because anything can happen, but more than likely they will move down in the first round. What do you see the Bears doing with that first round pick? If they move down, I would say, the 4 to 10 range is probably where they will end up realistically. Do you see them going defensive and taking like an edge rush guy there in the first round, or do you think they get a top tier, really high caliber offensive lineman to add some spark to this line immediately?
This is a really interesting question. I've been pondering it for a while now. the way I see it, if they drop to 4, which is the spot a lot of people really see them going because it's the Colts, it keeps them in the top
Right.
5. The Colts obviously need a quarterback. Plus, they have, a connection to the team. Chris Ballard and Ryan Poles work together, so there's already that communication that they have with each other. So it makes sense.
Right.
If I believe if they drop to 4, they're going to have their choice of either Will Anderson or Jalen Carter. Those are going to be one of the 2 picks because I think one of them is going to be there. I don't know which one because there's a lot of uncertainty right now with Arizona. They have no GM. They have no head coach. So we don't know what their identity is going to be until they make those decisions. So it's really hard to predict what they're going to do.
Right.
If we're lucky, they trade down out of number 3 for another team that's coming up for a quarterback, and all of a sudden you get to pick from both of those guys. But right now, my prediction is it'll probably be Carter at number 4. And if you can get him after trading down at number 4, I think that has to be the pick just because of his ridiculous upside. I have some reservations about his I have reservations about his productivity. I don't think it's where it should have been considering his obvious talent. But when you see a guy like that and what he can do, you have to take a calculated risk on him. And after moving down, I think it's a calculated risk worth taking. Now, if they move outside the top 5, we're talking, the 6 to 10 range. I think they're going to either look at an edge rusher, Miles Murphy of Clemson, or Tyree Wilson, who I think they're going to be really high on out of Texas Tech. He's 6'6", 36-inch arms. It sounds like the ideal type of guy that Matt Eberflus would, gravitate towards. If not one of them, I think it's going to be one of the offensive linemen, Skoronski of Northwestern or Paris Johnson of Ohio State, one of those tackles. I think they're going to be really high on one of those guys so they can sort of beef up the offensive line. Both of them fit the profile, athletic, mean, kind of a nasty streak. They fit the identity of what the Bears would want. So that is what I'd sort of be looking at if they did move outside the top 5.
So, Eric, with that offensive line, we've seen a lot of injuries like Tarbill was talking about. How many of those guys that are actively on the team do you think are going to be starting caliber for this team next year? And where do you think the Bears are best addressing that offensive line via free agency or in the draft?
Right now, I think Jones is going to be back at left tackle. I think he's pretty much earned that spot at least for another year. I think Tevin Jenkins has earned the spot at right guard. So those are the 2 I'm pretty confident will be back next year. Center is a really tough one. Obviously, Mustafa is not going to be the starting center. My question is, are they going to give Lucas Patrick another shot? I think they really liked him when they signed him last year. Unfortunately, the injury sort of set him back. He played somewhat at center, and he actually played well before he got hurt. So I'm wondering if they're going to give him one more shot and then focus on the 2 other spots, which are left guard and right tackle. And if it does come down to that and they do give Patrick another shot, I think they're going to focus on the tackle spot because I think they prioritize that over guard. And I think free agency is where they're going to try and attack that right tackle position. There's going to be a couple of guys I think they can get that are pretty solid. Jawan Taylor from Jacksonville, if he becomes available, I think he's going to be a target, a good pass protector, younger side, athletic. He's played really well in front of Trevor Lawrence, so I'd keep an eye on him. They're keeping an eye on the guy from Kansas City. For some reason, his name is escaping me, the left tackle who is going to be a free agent. I don't know if they've signed him yet. So he's one to watch. So the free agent class for offensive linemen isn't great, but there are some solid prospects, that are going to be available depending on what they do in regards to re-signing with their own team. So Taylor's the one I would be eyeing if he becomes available for that right tackle spot, because I think he would be a perfect fit.
So what's your take? Excuse me. What's your take on Larry Borum and kind of how he shakes out with this team in his next season?
I think he's actually a good swing lineman that they can use. He's shown that he can, play the right tackle position pretty well, but I think he's more of a backup. And he's also, log time at left guard, right guard. So he's shown that he can be versatile as well. I think he's worth keeping around. Not a starter at this point. I don't think he has the power to be the run blocker that they want, but he is a solid pass protector, pretty, all around. So you want to keep around a guy like that. He's still cheap on his rookie contract. So I expect him to be back.
Right.
Okay. Now with Tevin Jenkins, it was kind of hot and cold all season in terms of the productivity you were going to get from him. Towards the end of the season, he started playing well. Then he got hurt. Where do you think the Bears sit in terms of their opinion on him and his play over the last year?
I think they like his ability, no question. He's got power, he's athletic, he's smart, way smarter than people give him credit for. He shows a lot of awareness with stunts and blitzes and all that stuff. Their concerns are primarily medical because he's already had a number of injuries through his first 2 years. So
Right.
they're going to be wary of that. I think they're going to try and add more depth at guard just in case he continues to suffer from these issues. But I think they are going to give him one more year to see if he can stay healthy. And if not, then they'll probably address that position again in 2024. But for now, I think they're comfortable giving him one more shot at guard and probably adding depth behind him just in case he continues to suffer from the health problems.
I would agree. With Tevin, there were questions about his maturity early on in the season. Do you think that that's kind of all gone to rest now and that the organization has faith in him, that he's kind of grown up and is doing the things that he needs to do when healthy?
I think so. I think he's gotten his confidence back. He seemed to have lost it during the lead up to training camp because they benched him at tackle, and it took him a while to sort of get his head on straight. He seems to have embraced Chris Morgan's, demands as the offensive line coach. He was playing hard. He was in shape, all those sort of things. So it looks like he's sort of found his niche with the team. He seems more comfortable. And once you see that, a guy tends to get a lot better, a lot faster, in this league. So he's got the ability. We've all seen it. He's got the confidence now. Now it's just a question of health with him. And if he stays healthy, he's going to be a really good player for them for a long time.
Yeah, I would agree. And, many thought that when we did draft Tevin Jenkins, he was a steal at the spot the Bears were able to draft him. Obviously, the back injury there, his rookie season, kind of set everything back. And then the smaller injuries this year, as you said, a concern medically. But if he can stay healthy, I do think he will be a foundational piece of this line for quite some time moving forward. That kind of takes us into our next topic, Eric. You touched briefly on the line coach, but there was a comment from Matt Eberflus in the presser that they were going to evaluate the coaching staff in the coming days and have those conversations that need to be had at the end of the season. Do you see this team moving on from anyone in the coaching staff? Obviously, Eberflus is safe, but underneath him, do you think that either in Luke Getsy or the defensive coordinator, maybe even special teams, do you think any of those guys' jobs are at risk, or do you see the same coaching staff going into next season?
I think the coaching staff is probably going to stay pretty much intact. They do need a new defensive backs coach because I think he took a college job. So that's probably going to be something that they, work into. The only area I think they might evaluate is the passing game. So the receivers coach, the tight ends coach, all that sort of stuff, just to see if maybe there's something they can do about that. Maybe they didn't get what they were hoping for from one of those assistants. I don't know if that's going to be the case because those guys didn't have a lot of talent to work with. So, I don't expect any significant changes. I don't think Alan Williams, the coordinator, is going to be removed because honestly, he did pretty well with a banged up unit. And, a lot of his main guys were traded. Robert Quinn was traded. Roquan Smith was traded. And he still, got decent, stuff from Jack Sanborn and a bunch of other guys. So give him more talent. I think he'll probably perform better. And Luke Getsy had the #1 rushing attack in the NFL with a bad line and all that sort of stuff. So I think he did well for a first-year coordinator, and I think he deserves another shot. So I don't expect any sweeping changes.
Eric, one more topic that I wanted to broach with you is Poles made a comment about Chase Claypool and how he felt, this year really wasn't a fair evaluation for him. We've seen other guys go to other teams and make immediate impacts. The lack of production from him when he first came over, do you see that as a bad sign going forward, or do you think that with a full off season he'll be able to get the playbook under his belt and be able to contribute as that number 1/2 receiver that they hoped he would be?
My problem with the Claypool trade wasn't the talent. I believe in the talent. I think he has the capacity to be a really good player. It was the fit that I had a problem with because Justin isn't the type of quarterback right now that fits what Claypool is. He's not a type of quarterback that likes to throw it up a 50-50 ball and give his guys a shot. He doesn't do that very often. He likes to see his guys open on certain routes. Like, you saw with Chris Olave in college, and Mooney is much more his type of wide receiver, very precise and all that sort of stuff. So unless Justin starts to learn to trust and give his guys more opportunities in 50-50 jump ball or whatever types of situations, it's going to be kind of tough. But I think once they develop a better chemistry next offseason, which I guarantee they will, because Justin works harder than everybody in that regard, getting a connection with his guys. I think it's going to be significantly better, especially if he gets better protection, because Claypool is always at his best when he's able to go down the field, run vertically, and then you just throw it up there and give him a shot. He's absolutely masterful in those situations. And once Justin learns that, I think they're going to start to produce more big plays, which is why you probably didn't see it a lot, because the offensive line just couldn't give him a lot of time.
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
Once all those sort of things come together, I think he's going to produce a lot more. I don't know if he's ever going to, become the number one that they want, but I think he's going to become a valuable piece for what they're trying to build.
Yeah, it's hard to tell at this point with Claypool, in my opinion, at least. It's kind of a mixed bag, right? You saw his rookie season, he came out and did really great things on the field. Then second year, you're playing with noodle arm Big Ben Roethlisberger, as I like to call him.
Once his arm fell apart, that was really tough for Claypool because he couldn't hit him down the field anymore.
Right. He was effectively an older version of Mitchell Trubisky,
right,
dare I say. Got to get one more Mitch dig in there before I'm done talking about him. But
always.
No, ultimately, Eric, I think this team does look a lot different next season, and I'm sure you agree just with the sheer amount of cap space and the potential picks that this team has already. But what's one key to success that you see here in the offseason that will make the Bears instantly better next year?
The trenches. It has to be the trenches. You got to improve the offensive line, improve the defensive line. They were owned on both sides of the ball in that regard in 2022.
Yes.
So you've got to improve those areas. And I think if they do, they have enough skill players on both sides in the secondary and, in the receiving core. They've got enough athletes, and I think they're going to add more to be effective. And Justin's shown that even with average protection, he can be effective. If you give him good protection, he'll be even more effective. So, and the defensive line, that's supposed to be the bread and butter of a 4-3 defense, and it was their biggest weakness.
Right.
So that was a huge issue. And if you improve that, I think that secondary is going to be really, really good. You got a lot of good players in that regard. You got Eddie, you've got Jaquan, You've got Kyler, you've got Jalen. So you've got some playmakers on that side of the ball. So if you improve the trenches, I think they're going to be a considerably better football team.
And that's the thing, the script kind of flipped for us in regard to Bears fans being so used to seeing defensive football and the offense struggle over the last few years. It popped up in my memories on Facebook on January 6th that it had been 4 years since that double doink game. And I was there to witness that travesty. And it seems like so much has changed over these past 4 seasons. Obviously, the Bears with once an elite defense, arguably the best defense in the league in 2018. And then just the regression, guys getting older, guys getting hurt, being inconsistent to where we were at this season. It was so odd because you see those defensive battles where it's 10-7 and the Bears end up losing by 3. Well, now the script has totally flipped and you see the Bears losing by 3, but the offense is putting up 30 points in doing so.
Yeah.
So as different as it is, I guess, are overall with the body of work that we've seen from the offense, are you at a state where you can comfortably say that Justin Fields is the guy moving forward? I know you said you want to give him one more year, but I guess what I'm asking is, do you think he's proven enough to be the quarterback of the Chicago Bears next season and on as of now with the body of work he's had?
I think he's shown enough that he can be a true playmaker at the position. The rushing is already there. I'm not worried about that. He's got a natural instinct for that. The question is, can he sort of throttle it back just enough to where he's always going to be a threat, but is a pass-first guy? Right now, he doesn't trust his line for obvious reasons. His wide receivers just don't get open often enough. We want to see what happens when those two problems are mostly solved. And we saw glimpses of him being a professional passer towards the end of the season. Against Philadelphia, he showed it. Against Buffalo, he showed it. I think a lot of people grew concerned because of how badly he played against the Lions, but he was banged up. The Lions
Right.
had a lot to play for. It was on the road. It was the end of the season. They had nothing to play for. Everybody was kind of, running in mud at that point.
Right.
So you
Right.
really can't read too much into that game at that point. You have to look at him, where he was progressing before that game, because he was showing strides of, getting off the first guy, coming in the second guy, going to the third guy, and getting the ball out on time. He needs to do that more often. We know that. But I think he's trending in the right direction, and I think he's absolutely capable of being a franchise quarterback.
That is what I like to hear. You see so often the narrative in one more quick one before we let you go here, Eric. We know you got a time constraint this evening, and we appreciate all the time you've given us.
Sure.
The Ohio State quarterback narrative drives me crazy, right? There hasn't been a good Ohio State quarterback since Joe Namath, I believe, is usually
he was
the
Alabama,
comment.
wasn't he? I think he was Alabama.
No, Namath was Alabama. Yes, you're right.
As an Alabama fan,
so
how did you not know that?
I-
Come on, Tarbill.
I'm 30 years old. That's how I didn't know that, Angelo.
I think
That's right. I didn't know either,
I think it was Namath, and then it was Stabler right after him. So they had a bit of a run there in the 60s and 70s.
Did. But with that kind of mentality, it frustrates me that people peg a certain position from a school, and it's just no good in the NFL, right? You see it all the time. And Justin really at Ohio State, the point I wanted to allude to, was a pocket passer first. He was really a pass first guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that gives me the faith to know that if we build the pieces around him, he will revert to that. I just think that he's a dog. He works harder than anybody in the locker room, as you alluded to. And he's a guy who will do anything in his power for his team to win. I mean, we saw it time and time again, the 60+ yard rushes that he had on the season, where he's just the best athlete on the field, point blank, period. Obviously, we need to see a little bit more out of the passing game next season. I have full faith that we will see that, but it's tough reading some of the narratives that you see out there, especially some of the guys on Twitter who, it broke that the ESPN had a gentleman on in the morning show who said, trade him to the Jets, get him out of here. And as a Bears fan, you just have to be able to identify when you have a good thing. And the best quarterback that I've seen the Bears have in my lifetime was undoubtedly Jay Cutler. And Jay Cutler is an average at best quarterback when you look at his entire body of work.
Mm-hmm.
So moving forward, I think that this team has great upside on the offensive side of the ball, and it'll be interesting to see what happens next year. When we get ready to ramp up, obviously, we do our draft coverage and everything. We will definitely have to bring you back with us, Eric, to talk about some of the moves that they've made in the offseason and the free agent acquisitions. So, as always, sir, we appreciate your time. If you guys are not already following Sports Mockery, be sure to give Eric and his team a follow. They put out excellent content on the Bears on a daily basis. So, Eric, we appreciate your time as always. And thanks for joining us. Hope you have a good night, sir.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, Eric. We'll talk soon. Erik Lambert of Sports Mockery, ladies and gentlemen. Always a brilliant sports mind, really in touch with a lot of the moves that are going on behind the scenes and always willing to offer his great opinions to us here. So appreciate his time as always. We've got a couple comments here before we take a quick break. Brent here saying protecting Fields is the utmost importance. Could not agree more. I think that building, as Eric alluded to, building in the trenches and building something sustainable on the offense and defensive line is vital to the success of this organization next year. And they have to upgrade that pass pro. I mean, ultimately, the guys weren't good on run or pass blocking, but the pass pro was straight garbage. And we saw it, I watch a lot of the tape. So watching the all 22 when the NFL releases it, you just see time and time again these guys loafing and looking like Charles Leno Jr.
Yeah,
I think Charles Leno is actually a junior. So
Charles Leonard would have been a lot better on this offensive line than the guys they got right now. And that's crazy to say because he was awful.
Hot garbage.
Hot
But
garbage.
let's go ahead and take a quick break here, Ace. We will be back with you guys in just a few moments, and we will continue on to our next topic.
I'm undefeated. I came to fight for the love of the game. Unstoppable. That's why I'm undefeated. Off the leash, out of the cage, an animal. That's why I'm undefeated. I know I can beat it. Won't give up, 'cause I believe it. Fight for the love of the game. Unstoppable, that's right, I'm undefeated.
All right, guys, and we are back right here on the Undefeated Sports Network, and this is Sport Court. As my guy here, Ace, likes to say, court is in session, so
That's
let's
right,
get
baby.
right into it. We have a couple other topics to cover before we depart for the night. Lots of great talk with our guy, Erik Lambert from Sports Mockery. Again, if you're not following them, make sure you go give them a follow for some of the best Bears news out there. Let's get right into it, Ace. We alluded to this a little bit with Erik, but I want to fight a little bit about this one. So the Bears land the number 1 overall pick. Our guy, former Bears head coach, Lovie Smith, does the Bears
Coming
one
through in
good
the
last
clutch,
favor,
baby.
comes through in the clutch, says, screw it. I want to give Chicago the first pick. Let's go for it on 4th and 20, and managed to convert. And then he's like, you know what? We're driving it home for the shy, baby, because I love Chicago. Let's go for 2 and win this game. Now, ultimately, obviously, Lovie Smith wasn't playing to do the Bears a favor.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, wasn't there rumor that the GM had told him before the game
That he was fired before the game.
Hey, we're going to fire you after this game. So the best thing for you to do is just to go out there and lose. Like, if that's the case, why even let dude coach the game?
And he put up a big middle finger to that guy and was like, you know what? I'm going to go out here and do everything I can to win. They managed somehow to win, which was tremendous for the Bears. We are in the best position. The Bears have not had a number 1 draft pick since when, Angelo?
49?
46.
46.
1946.
Pretty close.
As a charter
years?
franchise, of the NFL, that is absolutely crazy that the Bears have not had.
And you know what's even more crazy is the fact that they've been so god awful over these years, and they haven't been awful enough to warrant the number 1 pick.
They've been just mediocre enough to hang in the lower quarter of the league, but they were not good enough at being bad to get the number 1 pick.
They're not really good enough at doing anything, really.
We got a comment here in the chat. Trade the pick back to get a haul. That's what we're going to get into right now, Facebook user. If you go to StreamYard.com/Facebook and click the accept button, we'll be able to see your name and photo. We'll put you up on the screen as you comment, guys. And or head over to our YouTube or Twitch channels. We will again be able to see your name and likeness. Let's get right into it, though, Ace. Number 1 pick, the Bears obviously are not drafting a quarterback. It's the NFL, never say never.
Right.
I am going to say never in this case. I don't think the Bears draft a quarterback unless they draft a quarterback simply to trade said quarterback to whatever team they want, and they go out and draft Bryce Young at number 1, and they just hold him as leverage until I don't know when and get a haul for. I don't even see that happening. I think our Chicago Bears trade down. We alluded to it with Erik that the Colts are a team that makes a lot of sense. Move into that number 4 spot. Even if you move back towards the 6 to 10 range, there's a really good wide receiver from TCU. It's hard to say that after they lost to Georgia the way they did, but there's top tier talent out there at the wide receiver position, as well as offense and defense, obvious offensive line and defensive line, I should say. Will Anderson, as much as I like watching him play football, I'm kind of a little concerned, especially as a fan, of his motor. I feel like he takes plays off, or he had, at least in college thus far, and I'm curious to see how that translates to the NFL. Obviously, raw talent like no other. Jalen Carter, same way, obviously, just really talented and physical guys. However, I don't know. I don't think that it's necessarily a slam dunk that they trade down and take one of those two. Maybe they trade a little further back into the 8 to 10 range, and then we start to see them go after a wide receiver or offensive lineman. I think, as crucial as it is to the development of Justin Fields, at least by the end of the second round, you have to have a top tier receiver on this team, unless you go out and make that move in free agency. Obviously, a lot of the narrative right now is that Cooper Kupp may be interested in leaving the Los Angeles Rams, especially if Sean McVay is out, which is crazy. Sean McVay is only a few years older than us, and he's already had a
Super Bowl, and he's already
won a Super Bowl, and he's already talking about going elsewhere. So I think him and Matthew Stafford are like the same age, actually. I believe I saw that during one of the games last year, but it's not a big year for quarterback talent this year. So the Bears are absolutely going to get a haul if they do trade back, which, I mean, honestly, I think they will. Ace, do you disagree?
No, so I don't see, when you have a top 3 pick, right? Usually you use that pick to draft your quarterback, right? It's kind of
right,
unless you get a guy like Solomon Thomas, like the 49ers did, who honestly really didn't pan out as much as you would have hoped for where they drafted him.
right.
I think a big focus with this draft needs to be, don't fall in love with one guy and think, okay, I need that guy, otherwise this draft is going to be a complete bust. If the Bears can pull some magic, convince a team, okay, hey, Houston, we got Arizona on the phone with us. They want to jump to number 1 to take their quarterback. What do you think? You guys, this is what they're offering. What can you offer us to jump up one spot? Boom. Houston jumps ahead of you. Wouldn't that be fitting that they won the last game and they could have potentially had that first spot, but then they need to jump up one spot to get.
Now they've got to trade up with the Bears.
Right. So, okay. So they make that trade, right? And now the Bears are sitting at number 2 with other teams behind them still that have quarterback needs. Why not try to double dip on the trade back market and see if you can, gain really, if you trade your first pick, and then you're able to trade the second pick, think of all the additional draft capital you're going to be able to get simply by moving to 4, maybe,
So that's the perfect scenario, right?
Right.
You move back to 2, you take that second pick and move back to 4 because the Colts are going to need a quarterback. So ultimately, in my mind, there's no question, Bryce Young is the first pick in this draft. So if you trade back a spot and Houston takes Bryce Young, that's going to force Indianapolis to really consider trading up for CJ Stroud, because he's going to be the only option left at this point. That's how thin this class is.
Right. And that would put so much more that would put the Bears in so much more control over what they can be asking for. I don't know if it's going to happen, but in my perfect scenario, that would be the ideal situation, that the Texans have their eyes set on one guy, and this is the guy we want. We're not going to let anybody get him. We're going to jump up to number 1 with the Bears. We'll trade them. And then you have teams like Indianapolis. You have who else is there? Arizona. There's talks about Murray
Las
still sticking
Vegas,
around.
the
Vegas.
Raiders. Yeah.
I think that depends on what happens with Tom Brady. There's a lot of rumblings that he's going to go to Vegas.
There's a lot of rumblings that Aaron Rodgers might go to the Raiders.
That is true too. Teams like Atlanta, Carolina, even if you move from 2 back to 8 or 9, yeah, you're still missing. You're not going to get one of those top defensive linemen, but there's still guys out there that can add to your defensive line on top
Right.
of getting more picks. I think.
So, sorry to cut you off
No,
there,
that's
Ace,
fine.
but here's the thing. I don't necessarily take any of those teams, especially Las Vegas, out of the trade conversation, because even if you do go out and sign a guy, a veteran, proven passer like Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers, both of those guys are facing the ends of their careers.
Right.
Tom Brady is 45 years old. He's not going to play forever. You cannot just go sign Tom Brady and think that your quarterback issue is fixed. Tom might play 1 year. He might play 2. He might play 5. He might try to make it till he's 50, but it's the unknown there that would lead a general manager to be naive to think the quarterback position was remedied if they go after a guy like Tom Brady. And honestly,
it's the same thing with Seattle, though, too, if you really think about
Geno,
it. Right?
Yeah.
Right, like Geno played well this year, but if you're
I
looking
think
at
Baker Mayfield's Seattle's quarterback
you think
next year.
so? Because I was kind of thinking
I
maybe
do.
he would stay in Los Angeles. Stafford's not going to be on that team forever. You know what I mean? And
I don't see him taking a backup role again. I think he moves to a team like Seattle, who I think Seattle will ultimately move on from Geno Smith. Geno Smith had the best year of his career this season for the Seattle Seahawks.
right.
Obviously, all those seasons when Geno Smith was a top 5 pick, was he not? When he was drafted by the goddamn Jets.
The goddamn Jets. I could see like I was thinking, what if Baker went to like Washington or Atlanta, a team like that has a solid foundation built already and really just needs a guy that can come in, plug and play. I don't know if Seattle is that team in terms of, they played well this year, but
right,
how consistent
but they have
is that
DK
going
Metcalf.
to be? I mean, yeah, that's true, but was he?
They have DK Metcalf. They have Tyler Lockett, who are both big time receivers.
Their defense is decent too. So I mean,
their defense is decent. Walker played well this season. They went through like 4 different running backs and were able to do well there. They've got insane depth at tight end. I mean, their team looks like the 2018 Chicago Bears when we had like 8 tight ends on the roster.
right.
Every week, every quarter, it seems like it's a different tight end catching the ball, which Noah Fant's obviously probably the number 1 there, but
I mean, think about this.
Them, there's just
if
a
the
bunch
Bears
of guys.
were able to come up with some way to get both of Houston's first round picks, right? And then still be able to make a trade with another team like Seattle, for instance, or even Indy. Like I know they only have 1 pick this first round, but you're still, looking at 2 first round picks plus whatever else you can get back in terms of second, third rounders. And realistically, that's where, as much as it's great to have that first round pick,
it's even greater to have that leverage, though, right? Ace?
To have the leverage, but to also have the ability to pick multiple guys out of the second round, the third round. You know what I mean? Like, just because they're second and third rounders does not make them less talented,
Right. And ultimately,
go ahead.
Ultimately, there's not a lot of guys on this team that are sheer, like, clear-cut starters next season, right? We have a handful of the blue chips, so to speak, if you use the stock terminology. Ultimately, I think that any player that this team drafts in the second or third round could be an immediate starter and impact player. So kind of just to elaborate there on what you were saying regarding the second and third round depth, I think that this team can get a lot in the second and third round where these guys could actually be immediate impact players. And we can speculate, we can talk as we always do about what the Bears are going to do in the draft, but it's going to be largely dependent on what they do in free agency. I mean, they're going to tie hand in hand, and with this organization having over $100 million in cap space for the first time in, I believe, 7 years, 7 to 8 years, it's been since the Bears had, any more than 60 million in cap space. This team has a real shot to strike iron here, build in the draft the right way, and capitalize on free agency. And this team could be a team that wins 10 games next season comfortably. It's all about how they utilize that capital.
I love your optimism.
Hold on. Don't me.
No.
Don't
Listen,
me.
We went wild preseason, right? We talked ourselves into 10-win season. Oh, well, they could win this game, they could win that game. If they win 10 games, that means they were 3 times better next year than they were this year. Actually, they're better than 3 times because 3 times they're only making 9 wins.
Okay, so the Bears are going to have a worse schedule next year. Or I shouldn't say worse, but easier opponents next year.
Theoretically, yes.
Well, I mean, that's typically how it goes, right? I guess I shouldn't speculate, but typically when teams have poor records, they play an easier schedule the following season.
Right.
So the Bears are going to have a easier schedule potentially. They're going to have Justin Fields year 2 in this offense, a guy who had 3,395 yards of total offense in a garbage time offense with really nobody other. By the end of the year, he had Chase Claypool and David Montgomery. That was it.
Yeah.
I see this team being much, much improved, and ultimately as bad as the record was, it doesn't really tell the whole story, Ace, because this team lost 6, if not 7 games by a differential of 7 points or less this season. There were many games this season where if just one more drive would have gone their way, this Bears team would have won. This team very easily could have won 10 games. It's not.
All right, so I'm looking at the opponents for them next season.
Okay.
Let's go through this. I know it's way too early. We don't know anything about the draft or free agency, but let's pretend that right from this moment, these are the teams. So at home, they play the Broncos.
That's obviously a win.
They play the Falcons.
That's probably also obviously a win.
Didn't they lose to the Falcons already this year? They did.
They did barely. They did.
The Panthers.
It's a winnable game.
The Raiders. And if Tom Brady is on,
if Tom Brady's the quarterback of the Raiders, that is not.
If Tom Brady's on the Raiders next season, I am going to that game, without a doubt, because the
only way the Bears win that game is if they bring in on a 1-game contract Big Dick Nick Foles.
That's right,
and
beat him.
He plays to beat him because Nick Foles is the only guy who's ever been able to consistently beat Brady. It's crazy.
He's the only guy who has the stones to beat him.
But no, winnable game.
So
it
then
depends
they play
what happens, though.
Arizona
should be a winnable game, even with a healthy Kyler Murray.
And then you have the Lions, Vikings, and Packers.
So
be tough.
Let's stop there for a second.
Okay.
The Lions are no longer the Lions of the past, right? They showed this season that they're.
Would you
going
be surprised
to be
if they won the North next year?
Yes, because I think the Bears are going to win the North next year.
All right. I like your hope,
but no. All right, just bear with me here for a second. No pun intended. The Detroit Lions are going to be a good team next season. I think that the North is going to be one of the toughest, if not the toughest, division in football next year. Justin Fields is going to be electric. You've got the Lions, who are only going to get better. Potentially the Lions draft could trade up and try to draft a quarterback. Jared Goff's not a long-term solution, but not to sit on the Lions too much. Looking at the Minnesota Vikings, obviously Justin Jefferson, best receiver in the NFL, right? There's no disputing that. Delvin Cook, tremendous running back. Captain Kirk, game manager quarterback who can win with elite talent around him. And then Green Bay with Jordan Love. Jordan Love, in his limited action last season, had, I believe, over a 100 QBR rating. And don't get me wrong, it was limited action. But I think Jordan Love is going to be, I hate to say this as a Bears fan, I think Jordan Love is going to be good when he comes out next year. And I do believe he's coming out for the Packers next season because I think Aaron Rodgers either goes to Las Vegas or he ends up in Tampa. If Tom Brady moves to Las Vegas, I believe Aaron Rodgers will be the quarterback of Tampa. Tampa will then forever be known as the quarterback retirement home. But that's okay.
Unless Brady goes to Vegas and wins, then I don't know. There's
right.
That,
but okay,
it's kind of crazy how wild the NFL off seasons have become, right? Like, definitely. I remember when there was like minimal movement for most teams, and now all of a sudden, like, we're looking at an opportunity where obviously we think, Baltimore will probably tag Lamar Jackson, but like, imagine if he just decided not to play under the franchise tag. So now they're in the market for a quarterback. Or
he pulls a Deshaun Watson and is just like, I'm not going to play for you.
Right. Or, Baker Mayfield, right? He's looked awful at times at certain places. If he went to a team, where's Tom Brady going to go? Aaron Rodgers drama always.
Right.
It's always something with that guy too. And I live in Wisconsin. I'm from Chicago originally, live in Wisconsin now. So I deal with a lot of Packer fans. And
Packers suck.
That's right. Packers do suck.
Packers suck.
And the general consensus up here is that, like, people are kind of just fed up with it. They're just done with the Aaron Rodgers drama.
Right.
I mean, I was listening to ESPN 1000, and they were talking about how the Packers, 3 of the last 6 years, they've had losing records. And, like,
right.
That's kind of wild if you think about it. Like, I would never have thought that with just how much, especially up here, how much people act like that team is just like insane.
Right. Yeah.
And if you think about the way that they've lost in the playoffs on top of having those losing seasons, like, yeah, Aaron Rodgers is good, but like, I don't think that team.
Aaron Rodgers is not everything, is what you're trying to allude to. And to pay a guy $57 million he's entitled to next season.
Yeah, something like
if
that.
If he plays for the Packers, it doesn't make sense for the long-term sustainability for your team. And Jordan Love's been waiting and developing and learning. You have to give the kid a shot to know if he's your future at some point. I feel
Aaron Rodgers, if they had an idea that he was their future, he would be playing. Don't you? Like, I know you got Aaron Rodgers, but at the same time, like, if there was even a thought that, okay, maybe Love can come in and be sufficient enough during the transition of losing Rodgers into building the team back, with the amount of stock that you could get for a guy like Aaron Rodgers, maybe not because of the contract, but you could still, where the Packers screwed up is when the 49ers wanted to offer them all that draft capital for Aaron Rodgers. And they said, nope, that was where
not
they
interested. Yep. No, I would agree 100%, but to counter your point about Jordan Love, I think that the Packers organization has done this a lot. Brett Favre, they let Brett Favre play past his prime while Aaron Rodgers sat on the bench and developed behind him.
Right.
You really look, the Packers have had Bart Starr, they've had Brett Favre, now they've got Aaron Rodgers, 3 Hall of Fame quarterbacks, in the last 60 years. I don't think Jordan Love is going to come out and be a world beater right away. I don't think that the reason Rodgers is still there is because they don't have faith in Love. I think LaFleur likes what he sees. I think he's just doing, I don't want to say the smart thing, but the seeing Aaron Rodgers for what he once was thing and hoping that he can strike that lightning in a bottle again. However, I think Aaron Rodgers is past that point in his career. He drank the ayahuasca and he is not coming back, my friend.
Yeah,
But
I
let's-
also think though that Matt LaFleur is a bit overrated too.
Oh, I would agree 100%.
That was not
Let's
supposed to happen.
let's go ahead and get into our last topic of the night, Ace. Before it's too late, the
Here comes
guy.
the money.
So, our man, Roquan Smith, transformed from Sloquan into Rich Homie Quan. Roquan gets the bag.
I love it.
Ravens give Smith a 5-year extension, $50 million guaranteed, $100 million contract overall, $20 million per year. Exactly what the Chicago Bears did not want to pay Roquan.
Yep, exactly what they did not want to pay him.
Were the Bears right to trade Smith? I don't know.
Yes.
I'm having dyslexia reading that because it says where the Bears, but
Dang
were
it.
the Bears right to trade Smith? In all seriousness, we did not spell check. Our apologies. But were the Bears right to trade Roquan Smith? Absolutely, they were right to trade Roquan Smith. You do not pay an off-the-ball linebacker $20 million per year, and I will die on this hill.
Bro, look
I
what Jack
think-
Sanborn did.
Jack
Put up
Sanborn
similar
was an
numbers.
undrafted free agent, correct?
Right. And he still put up similar numbers as Roquan. So, like, I don't think
It's all about the scheme and the coaching, and they coached Jack Sanborn up above his potential for sure. Ultimately, I think that the Bears made the right decision moving on from Roquan because he wasn't going to come to terms with a contract anyway.
Nope.
If you waited till the end of the season, you would have gotten nothing for him.
Yep.
And here we are, we got Chase Claypool, who might be nothing, but hey, at least it's a
nothing
guaranteed
like giving
nothing.
the first pick in the second round away for Chase Claypool. I still think that there's hope for him.
I do as well.
You know,
I do
when
as
we
well.
talked with Eric, he was talking that he agrees as well. I think this offseason for the Bears, it cannot be stated enough, is one of the most important off seasons this franchise has had. I think
Ever.
that the
in
Trubisky
the
draft
history of
was
the organization.
right. I think the Trubisky draft was one of those, and it set the franchise back. I think you look at the past of just complete wasted picks with guys like Kevin White or
Kevin White.
Adam Shaheen.
Is Kevin White in the league anymore?
I think he plays on New Orleans on their practice squad. But guys
Okay.
like Adam Shaheen and
Adam
you know,
Shaheen.
who the hell was
The tight end that we were going to turn into an
who was the
offensive
middle
lineman,
linebacker
right?
that they drafted in the first round a minute ago? Shea McClellan.
Yep.
That was him, yeah. So I mean, you're looking at a long history of busted first round picks.
Duds. Nothing but duds, man. You got to hit on something. This is the year to do so.
You have the number one pick. You have the opportunity to get more picks. And even if the first round pick doesn't pan out as much as we hope they do, whoever they take, you
Right.
need to build this offense and defense through the draft. You need to get more draft capital than you already have. You have some, you need more. Without that,
Yep.
this team is going nowhere. Because you also, like I brought up with Eric, the salary cap is nice and all right, but the NFL has
Right.
a floor that they have to hit. So the Bears are going to have to spend a certain amount of money. And then next season is Justin Fields' 4th year. So they're
Right.
going to have to make the decision if they're going to pick up the 5th-year option or not. And if they don't pick up the 5th-year option, then you have to decide, okay, well, are we gonna sign this guy long term? What's that
Are we
going to
gonna
cost?
Tag him. What, yeah.
You're
What are
going
we
to
doing?
lose Chase Claypool at the end of next season. If he's being productive, you're going to have to pay him as well. There's so
Right.
much that you have to do going forward.
I believe the
And-
Bears have to spend $65 million minimum to hit that floor that you were speaking
You can
of.
get a lot of players for that. And there's a lot of
Right.
maybe not like superstar pickups that you can get in free agency, but there's definitely enough guys out there that can improve this team going into next season. I don't think it's a 10-win ball club next year. I wouldn't be surprised if they won 7. If they
Okay.
went 3-7, I think that's a major improvement. even if they win 8,
If they build up the correct way, yes, 8
Right.
wins would be a significant improvement.
The
It's
worst
all
thing that
about
could
the
happen is
sustainability, right?
right. The worst thing that could happen is next season they put all these pieces in place. Fields doesn't make the jump in the passing game that
Right.
you're hoping for, and now you're, top 5 pick again. But then at the same time, you build up draft capital. Who's to say you can't move up in that draft to get what you need?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Ace. I think it is pivotal to the success of this organization long term for this team to have one of the best drafts that it's ever had in the existence of the organization this offseason. I think the draft is pivotal, and free agency is equally as important
I agree.
in creating something that's long-term sustainable for the success of this city, for this team to be what they need to be 4 years moving forward.
And I think you're going to know kind of how this offseason is going to go based off of free agency at first. Because if the Bears are able to sign some of these guys that they really covet in terms of, okay, we want this guy because we know automatically he's going to come in here, he's going to make this unit better. If they're able to get a couple of those guys, automatically your draft changes because you don't have to worry about certain key positions that you were needing to worry about.
Right.
I think if they can do well in free agency, manage the money the right way, I wouldn't be opposed to them signing a couple of their guys too this offseason, like Cole Kmet, Darnell Mooney, or
Right.
even
I
David
think
Montgomery.
obviously, I think those 3 that you just mentioned, they have to get deals done with. I think
agree.
as much as I like to say you don't pay running backs, David Montgomery has stated that he's going to take a team-friendly deal. That was kind of leaked mid-season. So if that's the case and they can come to a number that's agreeable and makes sense for the Bears and Montgomery, I think without a doubt you've got to extend all 3 of those guys. Obviously, if not during this offseason, at the end of next season, because I think you have another year with all of them, if I'm correct. But Cole Kmet's a guy that has turned into a top-tier upper echelon tight end and really flipped the script. So that's a position you don't have to worry about. You have solid pieces on this team. Your quarterback situation is solved for the first time in 50 years. You have a good running back in David Montgomery and a great second running back in Khalil Herbert, if you retain both of them. Darnell Mooney is a key piece to this team, and at least for next season, so is Chase Claypool. Defensively, you've got, obviously, your secondary is transforming into elite with Eddie Jackson, Jalen Johnson.
That's another thing.
Kyler,
we haven't even
and
talked about
Brisker.
Eddie Jackson.
Eddie Jackson, you do anything that you need to do to make him happy, to keep him on this team long term. His deal's not up at.
No, but he's injured, and he's coming off of an injury that when I read about it initially, they were saying
He's got the Liz Frank, right?
Right. That this is an injury that could linger for the majority of the season. And then he's a free
The majority of next season?
Yeah. They're saying that it's like a 12-month.
What?
Yeah. They're saying
so.
that
This is
100%.
worse. It's worse than tearing an ACL to have a Liz Frank, is what you're saying.
Oh, because of the nagging that comes with it. That's what I was reading. I'm no doctor, but
Dr. Ace here on Sport Court.
If that's the case, man, there's another hole you have to fill, right? And
yeah, I don't know.
crazy.
I wouldn't be. I'm not focusing on the secondary. I am strictly focusing on 3 areas, and we touched on it on our pregame show last week out of hibernation. It is crucial for the Bears to capitalize on offensive line, defensive line, and wide receiver. You hit those 3 positions, and obviously, when I say defensive line, that defensive line, really the front 7.
Right.
You need one more linebacker, and you need an edge rush guy.
And you need a guy that a tackle that can just get in there and stop the run, man.
So take the back 4 away from it. You got to work on those front 7, not obviously fill all 7 positions. But you got to work on the defensive line, the edge, linebacker, and then the offensive line and wide receiver are, if we count those all as individual areas, the 5 areas you need to target in this draft for this team to be successful. Most importantly, in my opinion, is offensive line. In ranking those, I would say offensive line, wide receiver, then defensive. As much as I hate to say it, the old adage that defense wins championships and we need to be the monsters of the midway again is just, it's getting old for me. Go out there and win by pounding the ball down a team's throat and scoring 50 points. I'm okay with that.
Except if you're scoring 50 and your defense gives up 75, you're going to lose a lot of those games.
Stop. No NFL team is giving up 75 points.
All right. So maybe that's a little extreme. But I do think so. Obviously, the trenches are going to be the biggest area of needs. I really think that a defensive end that can get to the quarterback is a vital piece that this team needs. They had 20 sacks this year. 20.
That's crazy.
Khalil
Mack
Smith
had almost 20 sacks by himself.
Right. Well, Robert Quinn had more than that last season by himself.
No, Robert Quinn had 18 and a half.
Okay, so pretty close. 19.
Broke the record that Richard Dent had.
Right. So, I mean, you're looking at a team combined that only had 20.
It was bad. I'm not going to lie. It was bad, and it's an issue.
You want your secondary to play better. The best way to do that is to get somebody that can get after a quarterback that'll cause the quarterback to throw the ball when they're not ready, which gives that secondary that we talked about the opportunity to make plays, which they showed the ability to do at times this season. They were very opportunistic for the most part this past season. I really think that is a key part in rebuilding this thing, is going to be getting somebody or a couple pieces on that defensive line that could at least slow down the other team. I'm not saying
Packers suck.
Packers do suck.
I'm sorry, I had to interrupt you there. I understand that this defense needs to get better. However, I think it's time for, let me reword my previous statement. I think it's time for us to focus on evenly building this team. We need to focus on adding both offensive and defensive pieces, whereas in the past we have focused solely on defense, it seems, and then there's nothing offensively left.
Right.
I think this defense definitely needs to be made better, and the way to do that is the same way you make the offense better, both through free agency and the draft. It's just really going best player available is kind of what I'm alluding to here, and not overreaching on a guy on either side of the ball because you think that they're going to be a world beater. Go after the guy who's the sure thing. Make the right moves in free agency, and this squad could be significantly better come the 2023-2024 NFL season.
It'll be a fun off season for sure.
It will be. With that being said, guys, we appreciate each and every one of you for joining us tonight. Thank you for taking the time to comment in. If you are not already following us, please be sure to go follow the Undefeated Sports Network on Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube. Hit that subscribe so you don't miss any of our new content. Follow our guy Ace at SportCourtAC on Twitter for all his latest updates. And be sure to give me a follow as well on Twitter, Tarbill_1252. We are growing the Undefeated Sports Network, guys, and we want you to be here for all the great content and great guests that we have coming in the next few weeks and months. With that being said, we appreciate all of you. Have a good night, everyone, and we will see you soon right here on the Undefeated Sports Network.
Yeah!